certain aspects of your own awareness, our awareness, are expressing through this neurophysiology, expressing in the form of sound. Why is it happening? How is it happening? There are different reasons for that, and how this may happen and how this is happening. Even people who come into this work and they say, oh, I'm already vocalizing a lot, I've been vocalizing, and when they actually spend some time, then they admit, if they really, really sincere, that this is a completely on another level.
I just have a question about today, but I do just want to thank you first again. I'm so grateful for what you're offering here. So today was the first time that I vocalized, and so I only have the experience of today with that, and the the movements, all the other kriyas I've experienced so far feel very clearly like a release, and all makes sense to me. I was not expecting what I experienced today, is this morning, but it's continued all day, where it doesn't feel like just that there's an energy, like an energy moving through. There's a very whole, very specific energetic body speaking through me very specifically. Mm-hmm. And she's still with me. And it doesn't make me afraid. I've done a lot of shamanic work. So I don't feel fear, but it doesn't feel like a release per se. And I'm not sure how to work with it. I mean, in the afternoon meditation, I was really tried to be just very open to allow for some, anything else. But I don't know if I just stick with that until she's ready to move on, or what, and how do we? I mean, I'm fine with doing a service to other energies as well. Like, I've worked with that, but it's really making me just question, is that something different? That's doing a service to other energetic bodies feels like something different than releases within ourselves in order to awaken our life energy. You know what I'm saying? So I'm trying to just reconcile all that. So I'm trying to reconcile that in terms of understanding, and then I'm wondering specifically what's the best way to go forward with this particular.
I hear you. Yeah. It's quite delicate to give this straight to a rational response, because then immediately it flattens what really is taking place, and there's a possibility also for us to somehow end up with misrepresenting this. So I will build a little bit, maybe speak from various kind of angles to address this. And it's also like, in terms of what can be said, really, right? What can be said about it? Can it be said out loud? Can be, whispered? Can be spoken in a different way? Again, I don't want to rationalize. Even if you're looking for a kind of explanative, clarifying, maybe something that would appeal to your rational understanding. But since this is an inquiry, let's go into this, okay? So first of all, and again, I'm not going to give this like scholarly take, although this belongs to that as well. In this book, we speak about it clearly. This, in a way, is really the culmination. And you are correct to point out, and perceptive also, you are to notice that this is not a release, that when the vocalization comes, it is because there is this something moves through you. You are taken over. And when a harmonization, vocalization, there is this overtoning, particularly of when there is clearly notes hit that people can't hit them in daylight, like outside of what's happening. We've had this operatic voices coming from a body which barely is there physically. Operatic, like the figure is arching backwards on the sofa, a slim, frail-looking lady is giving the operatic, full-blown, like what will require training, I don't know. So, what is it? The simple answer would be, is that it is indeed that what you're experiencing. It is that. Certain aspects of your own awareness, our awareness, are expressing through this neurophysiology, expressing in the form of sound. Why is it happening? How is it happening? There are different reasons for that, and how this may happen and how this is happening. Even people who come into this work and they say, oh, I'm already vocalizing a lot, I've been vocalizing, and when they actually spend some time, then they admit, if they really, really sincere, that this is a completely on another level, utterly and entirely. So, in the process of our sadhanas, in the process of unfoldment of consciousness, these archetypal forces of nature or archetypal forces of consciousness are accessed in a variety of ways, where in some cases that intimate relationship is formed, that which is exemplified in that traditional way of speaking about it as that personal connection. So this Ishta Devata is often revealed, and it is that what completes the process often. It's what also safeguards. It's what also reconfirms one's being plugged in to certain traditional streams that are always alive, not dried out. So there's a lot of things happen underneath. And why am I finding this a little difficult to speak about? Because I would have to inevitably also speak about or mention that to what I went through my sadhana and the realizations and actualizations and cognitions. So the nature of this work also, how it unfolded, how it coincided with the, and you remember, in Mexico was your first immersion, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. I'm not sure if we spoke there about how the vocalizations became the really accompanying phenomena of our immersions. We did not. But many of you know that, right? Many of you have heard us speaking about it. So for those of you who haven't heard this, I will just briefly outline that. And some of you here in the room, were you there, Gail, when it was? No, you came already in a dancing deer. Well, Amrita was, of course, there. Do you remember that, Amrita? At the Ralston.
Who came?
Hmm?
Who came?
No, don't worry, honey. Don't worry. So just Amrita was there. So this was quite some time ago. So we were in.
When the first time that you
Yeah.
started to hear vocalizations in Ralston?
Yeah.
Okay,
So it coincided with me using the shawl, actively going into the group, and the unleashing of the vocalizations. And I like to tell this story. When we went to the Amrita and I, this immersion was absolutely magical. This is where was Amrita's first awakening. Second was here in Mallorca, where the renaming took place. But it was her first opening out, really broken open. And it was just extraordinary in every way. We were all just blown over. And we were staying, those were prolonged stays. We were still living in North America, moving between Central America and North America, Canada, California, Arizona, back to Costa Rica. And we were renting this lovely old house in Mill Valley. And after the immersion, we went to the shop, like a really cool Mill Valley. Mill Valley, it's like a south of France, of California. Just for those of you who haven't been there, Mill Valley, it's like, it's chic. It's like, it's happening. It's, lots of like lovely old, it's all like this. It's not a grid. It's in nature and bay and the Ralston was up there on the Mount Tam. So we were looking there, and I'm like, trying this pair of white jeans and learning their price, and it's like, what? How can white jeans cost that much? Now take it back. And then Amrita she's more communicable than me. She just speaks to the guy, and it's like, yeah, we just held immersion, and one thing after another. I don't know how it all came. I don't think Amrita would have said to the guy that we had these vocalizations there, but somehow he said it somehow came out, and he was, oh yeah, Mount Tam is known for that. It's like, yeah, that's why we call it a singing mountain. And I'm standing there looking through the jackets and this, like all looking very cool, and I'm thinking, oh, cramps, so that's the Mount Tam Tam. So it's a Mount Tamal Pais, it's a singing. So it's not happening in our immersion. It's not because I'm there in that state and some of the goddesses just came down and doing their work through us. All right, never mind, So I like to tell the story because this is where it started and it never stopped. So it doesn't matter where we went, everywhere. Everywhere we went, this was the case. Even then we found out it doesn't even matter how long the programs are. if it's longer than just a couple of hours, it's bound to happen. And then people begin to flock into this work already because they find maybe that resonance, you see? But in the course of the sadhana, this is the body. This is that what is known as being taken over, you see? So we should not cease to speak about it, but also we cannot really speak about it without having also leaving some to the unsaid in a sense of truly what is taking place here. Because what truly is taking place here is that liquid silver-like. It's that what. Who is singing through us? What is? So traditionally we can speak about it. It's the process of being taken over by the Devi, taken over by the goddess, and it's the maybe greatest blessing. Who knows? So.
And so should I just, if the same energy keeps coming back, just stay with it and
if it does, you stay with that, yes.
Okay.
If it does, you stay with that, of course. It may continue at home and truly become part of your sadhana, or it may subside, you see? We don't know. This is something we don't know. It may subside for a while and not really manifest itself much, and then it may come back. But that, what is here exemplified by Samavesha, is what is the quintessentially the essence of this work. It can be spoken in various ways. It can be spoken of as being reabsorbed into the body of the goddess or repossessed. Repossessed in the sense of a true possession, because it takes over all false possessions. And there is this perspective, I don't know if it's pan-Indian or exists in other cultures. Certainly it existed in pre-religious times, and religion gradually, the custodians, the clergy, the custodians, they have lost that level of heart-to-heart connection, and the transmission perhaps went underground because the monastic life was wiped out. And the variety, that you can imagine how rich spiritual life might have been in those dark ages, very soon after the teachings of Christ, where there were so many inspired communities, and they were not all the same. They were not all the same. And there is this also, what I feel strong affinity here with what happens in this room, in this room's containers, with the way early Christianity was formed, particularly with the way liturgy came to be as a form which later on was adopted into the body of the Vatican, even if those who came up with those particular liturgical compositions were essentially no longer practicing communities, because they were wiped out. They were, just, taxation and centralization. They couldn't sustain themselves. They had to either go somewhere further away, or to adhere to this centralized system. So what I'm trying to say here is that perhaps someone one day would be interested to see this in relation to how these liturgical compositions were formed, because they were not composed. They literally, I'm absolutely certain about it, they were all byproduct, result of the community given to spiritual practices, where it came into and were given form. So for us it's in early days to speak about this, because we would need to be somewhere on the grounds. Like, imagine if we had 4 days and then the build up, when I marked that we had today marked the recordings, right? The most harmonious, right? The feeling like we kind of, the really, really perceived coherence in the sound, multi-layered, orchestrated like. How many days was that? Let's say 8th day of all together, since we've been, maybe the 9th day, and the 4 days. And imagine, and I say that, and I keep saying that, imagine if this is our room, just saying, and we keep that room warm all the time. No? Just imagine. That's all. So this is why it's still early days, it's premature to speak about how and what, but once we have our own container on the ground, then literally sky is the limit in terms of the potentialities it presents, because that energy is not dispersed. I mean, the old-timers here in this room know that when we go back to areas we sat a year, sometimes 2 after, we tap into our own energy, because that's how powerful. We leave the traces in the record, like Akashic record. There is an Akashic record. Unmistakable. So, I'm not sure whether this was still part of what you were asking, but so that what is spoken in terms of repossession, this understanding existed in so-called more primitive cultures, where, well, you're familiar with shamanic work, that's completely down that alley, completely. But in Tantras, this whole business of repossession is a very, very, very elaborate science in its own right. So it's not at all random, and it's not at all just abiding in Brahman, like the non-dual drill, just to kind of like. It is understood that there is this primal quality of consciousness that one way or another has these distinctive obsessive qualities, and that's how it functions. So in the constant influx in that holographic-like permutation of various, let's say, different structures that come into being, crystallized, then they dissolved, crumble, something else, constantly metamorphing. This quality is always present, and it's a particular quality that creates the possibility of something to be crystallized in the first place, for it to take a certain collective form. And the most simple, direct examples is just to look at the slice of our culture. It's all based on various forms of possession. These possessions are everywhere. People are possessed by certain qualities that are expressions of particular forms of energy. Some of them are downright negative, some of them are more neutral, some of them just a great sidetracking, some of them are that enhances all these qualities, and some of them are divine, angelic, and so forth. So there is this constantly going on in the culture, in the day we live in the day and age we live in now. Recognizing this a long time ago, obviously, that in Tantra it is understood and worked with. So that you're touching this, and I could say, without running the danger of coming with some hasty conclusions, because that's not what I'm doing, simply encouraging you, making attempts to clarify it, but also you're touching the levels of much higher degree of sadhana, that's all. It's like you're touching this formidable, nothing to do with your efforts levels, because that's what it is. And as I said in the book, we have a whole chapter entitled Into the Body of the Goddess, where we talk about it. We go into, I wouldn't say into a great length, it's more like spoken in a more of a concise and succinct manner, so as to bring that very clearly to what it represents. But what I wanted to also say again, to re-emphasize, for those who like, oh, I don't want to be possessed, I don't want to be possessed or repossessed, like I want to live normal life. Well, guess what? There's no such thing. There's no such thing. Nothing is normal life. It doesn't exist. It's simply an oxymoron, if there was ever one. There's always something at work. It makes us feel that, yes, I go here, I get up and I go there. No, I get up and I go here. I move in free space. I drive a car, fly, I go on an airplane, I meet people, I speak on the phone, I have this, I can post this, I can say this. And we think that we are acting as agents of our own. In fact, we don't. We're grooved in and, doing this. Shrek again, Shrek. Time for time. Remember Shrek 4, Shrek 3? When this naughty Rumpelstiltskin got hold of the flute and playing there. You don't know that, Astrid. Your kids are much be much older. I'm still fresh. Oh, this is a. It's just absolutely extraordinary. He's just playing, and they were supposed to they were creating this ambush, and instead they got ambushed, and because of that tune, that melody, that particular flute that Rumpelstiltskin is playing, all the Shreks, because in the Shrek 4 there are Shreks, they're all many Shreks and Fionas, and there's a different reality, and it's playing with all, and they all start dancing there, and they dancing is like, it's hilarious. This is how it is. It's like we think we go dancing, but in fact it's, it's like, oh wow, So speaking of possession, this is also a great reminder, and it's also the possibility of tapping into this and truly decide what we want to be possessed. Then when we are possessed out of our at least a portion of that will, consciously giving ourselves into a possession of something. There is something to it. But when we are taken for a ride and we don't even know it, yes, that's what it is. So, those of you who have read Robert Svoboda, like this trilogy of the Agora trilogy, or some like other it's not it's a kind of autobiography, or other autobiographies, and you would come across this kind of like all these tantric myths and legends and all these expositions, and that according to Tantra, everything that we do consciously is what matters. So one can do unspeakable things, but consciously, and it matters because it's done consciously. But when we do things unconsciously, that's where we are entrenched. We act out of the conglomerate of what ignorance is. It's a big knot of confusion, and so that's what we untangle here. And what this kind of happenings, this manifestation, is when the goddess begins to take over. It heralds access that something in the neurophysiology itself is already opens to that, into that possibility. You see? So, yes, I would certainly consider it as a great blessing.
Okay, thank you.